If you want a quick test for danger, try this. Imagine a hand extended toward you, smiling, warm, apparently safe. And imagine that same hand holding an invisible string tied around your rib cage. Every time you breathe, the string tightens. The more you lean toward the warmth, the more the string tugs you off your center. This is how the most dangerous behaviors of toxic people feel. They do not arrive as monsters. They arrive as relief. They arrive as rescue. They arrive as a version of love that asks you to stop loving your own eyes. Jung warned that what we refuse to see in ourselves shows up as fate in our relationships. The unseen seeks us through people who act out our unclaimed truths. Tonight, I want to help you spot the 7 most dangerous behaviors of toxic people through a Jungian lens. Not to demonize anyone, but to give your soul a map out of the fog. If you've ever felt confused after a conversation, if you've apologized for things you didn't do, if you've woken up feeling small in a life that once fit you, this episode is for you. And if you're ready to turn on the lights, I invite you to like this video right now so it finds someone who needs it. Welcome to Deep Psyche Lab. If you're new here, I'm glad you found your way in. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. We make psychology human, cinematic, and practical. The topic tonight is simple to name and hard to live. Toxic behaviors are patterns that shrink your freedom while borrowing your language of love. They can come from partners, friends, family, bosses, even spiritual leaders. They can come from intelligent people who are wounded, charming, successful, persuasive, and lonely. In Jung's terms, they are often possessed by a complex, which means a cluster of emotion and memory has taken the driver's seat. They do not feel like they're acting, they feel acted through. The danger is not only that you can't reason with a complex, the danger is that the complex knows your softest entry points. So our work is not to become paranoid. Our work is to become precise. I'll speak to you like a friend who has been both the observer and the observed, who has held the thread for many people walking out of the maze. You will hear echoes of your past. You will recognize patterns you've seen in others. And you may, if you're courageous, notice small versions of these behaviors in yourself. That is not shame. That is the threshold of freedom. Toxic behavior number 1 is seduction that turns into subtraction. At first, you meet a mirror. You feel seen. You feel amplified. The person studies your language and returns you to yourself with brighter colors. Jung would say the anima or animus, your inner image of the other, has projected onto them, and the early glow is the warmth of your own unlived life bouncing back. This is not wrong. All love begins with projection, but the dangerous version moves quickly from, I understand you, Sadhu, to, I own the definition of who you are. The seduction is not a slow curiosity. It is an accelerated intimacy that bypasses the ordinary cadence by which trust is earned. They rush the bonding. They give future promises as if they can write guarantees on the weather. Then the subtraction begins in tiny ways. You used to laugh loudly. You become quieter around them. You used to call your sister. You start canceling plans. You used to dress like a field of sun. You begin choosing gray because gray feels safe around their size. A seduction that becomes subtraction is a red thread in every toxic dynamic because the point is not love. The point is control, dressed as care. In Jung's language, this is inflation. The person has identified with a godlike position in your story. They feel entitled to define your reality because they started by flattering your reality. If you are in this dynamic, watch for speed, watch for future fusing, and watch for the first moment you stop doing something small that used to make you feel like yourself. That is the moment the subtraction becomes measurable. This pattern hands the baton to a second behavior, gaslighting, which is not merely lying. It is lying about your capacity to know. Gaslighting says your memory is water and your heart is untrustworthy. It isn't always as obvious as that never happened. Sometimes it is you're too sensitive, which implies the event is real, but your scale is broken. Sometimes it is you misunderstand me, I was joking, which loops you into decoding their tone forever. Sometimes the gaslight arrives as philosophy. Truth is subjective, babe. Why are you being so literal? Jung warned that the mind can be possessed by a trickster archetype, which loves to play chess with language so that you feel silly for naming what you feel. The trickster is not evil. It is the part of psyche that destabilizes rigid structures so new life can emerge. But when someone is possessed by it in a relationship, the destabilization never resolves. It leaves you groundless. You start writing messages to yourself after conversations, dates, times, details, because you no longer trust your inner witness. The danger of gaslighting is not only that it changes the story, it changes your storyteller. You learn to seek permission to believe your own senses. If this is resonating, 2 moves help. First, return to the body. Gaslighting can create a split between cognition and sensation. Keep a record of how your chest, gut, and jaw feel before and after interactions. The body's narrative is slower, but harder to edit. Second, find a reality check with one trusted person who has no stakes in the situation. The antidote is not to fight as a lawyer. The antidote is to rebuild your inner judge. From gaslighting grows the third behavior, intermittent reinforcement. This is the casino method of affection. It uses unpredictability to make you loyal. If every time you press the button you get a pellet, boredom sets in. If you never get a pellet, you leave. But if you sometimes get warmth and sometimes get ice, you become vigilant. You forget that love should be a climate and not a lottery ticket. Jung would say the psyche is drawn to mystery because it promises transformation. Intermittent reinforcement hijacks this drive by making you interpret withholding as depth. You might find yourself thinking, "They are so complicated, I must be patient." Or worse, "My patience will prove I am worthy." Meanwhile, your nervous system is learning to love adrenaline more than safety. When the praise comes, you melt. When the silence arrives, you go to work. It is not your weakness that keeps you. It is the schedule. The fix here is hard because the schedule is designed to bypass your higher thinking and loop your limbic system. To interrupt it, make a rule privately. I do not negotiate my worth during silence. I do not increase effort to earn the bare minimum you once gave freely. If you are great only after I threaten to leave, then my leaving is the only honest conversation we have had. Fourth is triangulation and its cousin, the smear. In a healthy triangle, a third person helps 2 people regulate conflict. In a toxic triangle, a third person is used as a weapon to create insecurity and dependency. Triangulation sounds like, "Everyone else thinks you're overreacting," or "My ex never made such a big deal," or "I can talk to this friend about deep things because they get me in ways you don't tea." The point is not the friend. The point is to unseat you from the inside of the relationship. The smear campaign is the external version. When you pull away or set a boundary, the person begins quietly editing their retelling of the story to position themselves as the stable one and you as the storm. Jung wrote that when a complex is threatened, it seeks allies. The toxic person recruits your audience because they cannot convince your inner witness anymore. If you've lived through this, the pain is not only the loss of the person, it is the theft of your public face. Notice something though. People with real integrity need to rush to explain themselves to everyone. They live long enough for the pattern to show. If you're dealing with triangulation, your counter move is not to outperform the ghost in the room. Your counter move is to anchor conversation in specifics. I want to talk about what you and I feel today, not about comparisons. If the smear has started, document calmly and let time be a witness. Rush is the devil's friend in these scenarios. Patience is the ally of reality. The fifth behavior is boundary erosion through covert contracts. A covert contract is a deal that only one person knows about. I'll be endlessly flexible with your needs, and in return you'll read my mind and never make me feel alone. I'll never bring up your drinking in public, and you'll protect my reputation with your family. I'll swallow my anger for a month, and one day you will confess you've been wrong all along. These deals are made in the fog and cashed in during a fight. You will hear words like, "After everything I've done for you," but the ledger was never agreed upon. Jung would call this the shadow market, unconscious bargains that carry the weight of fate. Boundary erosion starts small. You cancel when they text, you endure a joke that cuts, you update your preferences to match theirs. You stop asking for something sweet because asking activates their brooding. The boundary dissolves not at the fence but at the gate. You keep opening it to be seen as good. The antidote is unromantic and beautiful. Say your price out loud. Say what you give freely, and what you give with an expectation, and what you cannot give at all. Watch who becomes more loving after you speak clearly. Watch who becomes more punitive. Their reaction teaches you the role your silence was playing in their system. Sixth is the double bind that trains you to betray yourself. A double bind is when both choices cost you. If you speak, you are dramatic. If you are silent, you are cold. If you stay, you are desperate. If you leave, you are disloyal. The toxic mind loves double binds because they produce guilt without exit. And guilt without exit is control. Jung's warning about possession by a complex matters here. When someone is fused with a mother or father image in their psyche, they can become punitive like an angry parent, or withholding like a disappointed elder. The double bind keeps them in control and you in supplication. You start asking for the right script. You start believing there is a phrasing that will make the conversation go well. Meanwhile, the conversation is not a conversation. It is a ritual in which your job is to repair their mood at any cost. The way out of a double bind is to step outside of the frame. Nothing inside the frame is fair. You can say, "I won't choose between two options that both erase me." Here is a third. I will not explain my feelings to a person who uses my feelings against me. If that sounds too strong, remember what is at stake. In double binds, your soul starts to believe it is unsafe to exist without strategy. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is to refuse the contract that says your existence needs permission. Seventh is the slow turn from person to role. The toxic person may start as an individual, but as time passes, they become an archetype in your life. The judge, the savior, the devourer, the tyrant, the trickster, the orphan whose pain outranks yours. The pure Eternus who refuses to grow, the Senex who rules with rules. Jung's brilliance was to name these patterns so we could see them instead of becoming them. When someone becomes a role in your mind, notice your own counter-role. If they are the savior, you might become the wound. If they are the judge, you become the defendant. If they are the child, you become the parent. Roles lock in mutual suffering. The danger is not that archetypes exist. We all carry them. The danger is when they harden like masks that keep you from relating as two humans in time. You will hear yourself saying, "This is just who they are," or "This is my lot." That is not love. That is fate talking through a mask. To shift this, ask simple human questions that cut across roles. What do you actually want tonight? What did you hope would happen when you criticized me? What would be enough for you to feel loved? Roles cannot answer those questions without melting. If they can't, you'll know. The relationship is not alive. It is theater, and the ticket price is your spontaneity. By now, you have likely recognized one or more of these behaviors. Seduction that subtracts gaslighting, that edits your inner witness intermittent reinforcement, that trains you to chase triangulation that loosens your place boundary erosion through covert contracts, double binds that punish your existence, and archetypal possession that turns living people into roles. The map is not meant to make you suspicious of everyone. It is meant to help you choose the kind of love that increases your surface area. A Jungian view refuses the fantasy that you will someday find relationships without shadow. Instead, it offers hope that shadow can be made conscious, that power can be named and shared, that attraction can be honest about its projections and responsible for its corrections. Some of you are wondering right now, what if the toxic person is me? That question is the least toxic thing you could ask. Jung would applaud the courage because the most dangerous people never ask it. They crowd reality with justifications so thick that no oxygen can enter. If you notice small versions of these behaviors in yourself, take heart. No one exits childhood clean. We learn to distort reality to survive. The difference between the toxic and the healing person is not that one never distorts. It is that the healing person tells on themselves and makes repairs. For example, a repair to gaslighting sounds like, "I said you were too sensitive. That was dismissive. I'm sorry. Let me hear the meaning behind what you felt." A repair to intermittent reinforcement sounds like, "I have been moody and withholding when stressed. That is not fair to you. I will not use silence as punishment." A repair to triangulation is, "I brought someone else into our conflict to get validation. That undermined you. I will speak to you directly and only involve a third party with your consent." A repair to boundary erosion is, "I was keeping a secret ledger. I will stop doing favors that I later weaponize. I'll only give what I can gladly give, and I'll ask for what I need out loud." These are not magic phrases. They are practices, and they shift a relationship from a maze into a path. If you're leaving a toxic dynamic, you will go through withdrawals, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system has been trained to expect intensity instead of intimacy. You might miss the rush, the fight, the apology, the makeup glow. Intermittent reinforcement created a chemical bond. You are not addicted to the person only. You are addicted to the cycle. Grief will arrive. Doubt will show up late at night as if it has a spare key. People in the toxic person's orbit may question your decisions. Your memories will play with soft lighting. This is normal. Jung would call this the enantiodromia, the swing to the opposite. When you step into clarity, your psyche will test the old fog to see if it still fits. Be patient. Shadow integration is not a sprint. It is a long walk where you stop taking calls from your old hunger. Reality will become beautiful in the quiet way life is beautiful when it isn't as staged for an audience. You will laugh again without checking the room. You will say no without a closing argument. You will plan a weekend that doesn't need tea, include recovery from a hurricane you didn't need tea cause. There's something else. Noticing toxic behavior can tempt you into moral superiority. Resist that. Jung's warning is precise here. The shadow you refuse to own turns into a mission to cleanse the world of what looks like your shadow. If you catch yourself narrating other people's flaws like a religion, pause. There is a difference between discernment and obsession. Discernment protects you and keeps your heart available. Obsession handcuffs you to the very patterns you want to transcend. Remember the line many of us forget. The point of insight is not to win. The point of insight is to love sanely. Sanity in love looks like 3 honest sentences. I will not abandon myself to belong to you. I will not abandon you to remain comfortable. I will leave if I must, and I will stay if we both can grow. Jung spoke often about the self, the organizing center of the psyche that is larger than the ego and wiser than our roles. When you are caught in toxic behavior, the ego becomes a small captain, frantically steering a ship in a storm. The self, though, is the whole ocean. It speaks in dreams, slips signs into the day, and creates coincidences that hold your hand back from calling at 1 a.m. It might send you a book, a therapist, a podcast, a friend's question that lands like a bell. You can cooperate with it by telling the truth even when your voice is tired. Tell the truth on paper first, if needed. Put dates next to your sentences. Name patterns without poetry. Then tell the truth to one safe person who will not turn it into entertainment. Finally, practice telling the truth to the person in front of you and be ready to choose the version of yourself that can live with the consequences. Individuation, the Jungian word for becoming a true person, is not glamorous. It is you learning to stop trading your soul for a seat at a table that keeps wobbling no matter how many napkins you fold under its leg. I want to speak to the hope that often gets lost in conversations like this. You are not behind. If you tolerated fog for a long time, it means you had a good reason once. Perhaps as a child, your safety depended on reading moods faster than feelings. Perhaps you learned that love is earned through performance. Perhaps you learned to disappear to keep the peace. These skills were real gifts then. They kept you alive. Now they are asking to be honored and retired from their exaggerated job description. You can keep your sensitivity and lose your self-doubt. You can keep your generosity and drop your need to earn oxygen. You can keep your humor and stop using it to cover the bruise on your voice. Jung would say, where your fear is, there is your task. If you fear naming the pattern, the task is to name it once. If you fear leaving, the task may be to plan your departure, even if you choose to stay longer. If you fear being alone, the task is to become good company to yourself, so you are never again bargaining with loneliness at midnight. I'll share a small exercise that helps many people step out of the circuitry of toxic behavior. Take a plain sheet of paper, draw a small circle in the center and write, "Me, when I'm calm." Around it, draw 7 spokes, one for each behavior we've described. At the end of each spoke, write your personal signal, not the general definition, the exact thing that happens to you. Maybe gaslighting shows up as a headache behind your right eye. Maybe triangulation shows up as pacing around your apartment while rehearsing conversations. Maybe covert contracts show up as a strong temptation to say, "It's fine," when it's not. Then next to each signal, write the simplest sentence you can speak when you notice it. For gaslighting, I trust my memory enough to pause. For intermittent reinforcement, I do not chase affection during silence. For triangulation, let's keep this between us. For boundary erosion, I can't commit to that. For double-bind, I won't choose between 2 losing options. For archetypal masks, I want to meet you as a person, not a role. For subtractive seduction, I want to go slower. Keep the paper. This is not magic, but it is a design. And the psyche responds to design the way a lost traveler responds to a lit window. Sometimes we imagine that naming toxicity will make us bitter. It can, if we stay there. But the deeper medicine is that clarity restores your capacity for awe. When confusion recedes, ordinary kindness feels like rain in a dry country. The person who texts "home safe" without a performance is a wonder. The friend who apologizes without explaining away the damage is a wonder. The partner who keeps their word on a Tuesday is a wonder. You will find that the bar for miracles lowers from fireworks to fidelity. Jung, whose work is often seen as mysterious, would smile here. He understood that the soul does not need spectacle. The soul needs truth with a pulse. And truth with a pulse often looks like a steady dinner, a soft tone, a clear boundary, a shared plan, a laugh that doesn't sting, and a small apology that doesn't require a trial. You may still carry the fear that if you leave a toxic dynamic or name it, you will be alone. Let me say what I have seen repeatedly. When you choose clarity, you become visible to better matches. It's not magic, it's mechanics. You stop signaling to the world that your currency is self-erasure. You start signaling that your currency is presence. People who have been looking for presence begin to notice. And the ones who were thriving on your fog begin to disappear because the diet changed. This is not punishment. It is ecosystem. Your job is to keep your interior climate healthy enough that only certain species can live inside your days. Before we land, I want to speak directly to those who are still inside. If you cannot leave yet, let's not make this an all-or-nothing morality tale. Begin with light. Light is small honesty repeated. Tell the truth to your journal, then to a friend, then in one sentence to the person, then in one action that aligns with your sentence. You do not have to announce a revolution. Revolutions that last often begin with private oaths. Make one. I will not lie about my feelings to keep peace. Make another. I will not explain my boundaries for more than one paragraph. Make a third if you like. I will not rescue adults from the consequences of their choices. Then keep living. Notice who leans in when you are honest. Notice who turns ghostly. The pattern will reveal itself. And when it does, your choice will not feel like suddenly jumping off a cliff. It will feel like walking the last few steps out of a tunnel you have already been leaving. If you've been with me this far, thank you. Your mind is strong and your heart is fierce, and I do not mean fierce like hard, I mean fierce like steady heat. If this conversation already cleared some air around your life, I'd love for you to like this video because it truly helps it travel. And tell me in the comments a phrase that becomes your practice for the week. If you want one to borrow, type this: I choose clarity over control. That sentence is the opposite of what toxic behavior demands. Toxic dynamics want control with no clarity. You are choosing clarity, which often dissolves control because it makes the truth unignorable. And if you find yourself typing that phrase with a shaking hand, know that thousands of others will read it and remember their own strength. A quick word about the psychology here. Notice how each dangerous behavior tries to edit your relationship with reality. Seduction is subtraction, edits your relationship with your own shape. Gaslighting edits your relationship with your senses. Intermittent reinforcement edits your relationship with time and reward. Triangulation edits your relationship with the community. Boundary erosion edits your relationship with fairness. Double binds edit your relationship with choice. Archetypal possession edits your relationship with personhood. All 7 are assaults on wholeness, and individuation is a return to wholeness, not because life becomes neat, but because you learn to belong to yourself inside complexity. That belonging is not arrogance. It is the quiet confidence that says, I am allowed to be here as me. If a relationship cannot tolerate that sentence, it cannot hold a soul. As you move into your week, practice 3 anchors that make toxic patterns less sticky. First, slow your yes. Let me think about it is a boundary that saves futures. Second, narrate your inner weather. I feel tight in my chest after our talk. I need a pause. Third, collect evidence of safety. Keep a list of interactions where people met you with kindness. The mind has a negativity bias. It forgets safety quickly because danger gets resources. Train it otherwise by saturating it with small proofs that love can be gentle and consistent. Over time, the old appetite for chaos goes quiet because you stop feeding it. I'm leaving you with one small story. A woman once told me that she left a long, toxic relationship after a moment with an orange. She was grocery shopping alone for the first time in months. She picked up an orange, and she realized she was choosing it because she liked the heaviness in her hand and the way the skin smelled like sun. There was no performance in that aisle, no audience, no triangulation, no ledger, just a person and a piece of fruit and an honest desire. She cried, not because of the orange, but because she remembered what choosing felt like. Toxic behavior had trained her not to notice what she wanted. In the end, healing was not a grand declaration. It was buying her own fruit and tasting it fully. We don't have to make our freedom dramatic. We only have to make it ours. This channel is educational and not a substitute for therapy. If this episode sat with you like a friend at your kitchen table, consider subscribing to Deep Psyche Lab and turning on the bell so the next episode finds you on time. Like the video if you found value. It helps more than you know. Leave a comment with the phrase, I choose clarity over control, and tell me which pattern you're unlearning first, or which sentence helped you breathe. Share this with someone who is walking out of a fog. They may need a map and a voice that doesn't rush them. Thank you for bringing your mind and your heart here. Until next time, stay with your breath, stay with your truth, and let your life be the evidence.